Book of Heaven, Volume 27, Part 6. December 16th, 1929. How Jesus had need of nothing, possessing within himself the strength creative of all goods. How the divine volition is the bearer of all created things. The generative virtue. I was continuing my round in the divine Fiat, to unite myself to all the acts done by it, for love of us all, its creatures. But as I arrived at the point in which my lovable Jesus descended into the lowliness of the human acts, such as suckling the milk from his mamma, taking food, drinking water, and lowering himself even to work, I felt amazed in seeing that Jesus, by his nature, had need of nothing, because possessing within himself the strength creative of all goods, he could do without making use of the very things created by him. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, making himself seen and heard in my interior, told me, "My daughter, you are right that I had need of nothing, but my love, having descended from the height of the heavens to the lowliness of the earth, could not remain quiet nor still. I felt the irresistible need to let my love out, and to love in those very acts which the creature did by necessity. While I did them to let my love run toward her, and so be able to say to her, 'See how much I have loved you,' I wanted to descend into your littlest acts, in your necessities, in your work, in everything, to tell you that I love you, give you my love, and receive your love. But do you want to know the primary reason for which I lowered myself so much in doing so many lowly and human acts? Necessity did not exist in me, but I did it in order to fulfill in each act the divine will. All things would present themselves before me for what they were in themselves, where they had come from, sealed by the divine Fiat, and I would take them because it was wanted by it. It can be said that there was a contest between my divine will, which by nature, as word of the Celestial Father, I possessed within me, and my same divine will spread in the whole creation. So, in all things, I knew and saw nothing but my divine will. It was my food, my water, my work. Everything would disappear from me, and it was always my divine will that I would deal with. And while my divine will would make me descend into the human acts of creatures, I would call all the human acts of each one of them, that they might receive the great gift of having my divine volition descend as prime act and as life of their acts. Oh, if created things looked at created things for what they are in themselves, their origin, who it is that nourishes them and preserves them, and who the bearer is of so many things that serve the human life. Oh, how they would love my divine will, and would take the substance of created things. But they look at the exteriority of things, and therefore they attach their hearts to them, and feed themselves from the cortex of them, losing the substance present inside created things, which came out of us so as to let creatures perform many acts of our divine will. But to my sorrow, I am forced to see that creatures do not take the food, the water, nor perform their work in order to receive and fulfill my divine volition, but out of necessity and to satisfy their human will. And my divine fiat is put out of their acts, while we created so many things in order to place our divine will as though in a bank in the midst of creatures. And by not using it, they keep it as though in a continuous act of bankruptcy. All the good which they should take, if in all things they fulfilled and took my divine will, remains broken for them. And we remain with the sorrow of not seeing it as dominator and queen of all the human acts of creatures. Then I continued my abandonment in the divine fiat. I felt the great need of it, and of remaining always in its sea of light, never to go out. I felt it like heartbeat, like breath, like air that infused life in me, and maintained in me the order, the harmony, the dissolving of my little atom within its divine sea. But while my little mind was crowded with thoughts of divine will, my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, there is no order, nor rest, nor true life, but in my divine fiat. In fact, the life of each creature, her first act of life, is formed within the womb of her Creator. And then, as a birth from us, we put it out into the light of the day. And since we have within ourselves the generative virtue, as a child of ours, it carries with itself the seed that generates. And with this seed, the creature forms many other births. And as she keeps carrying out her life, she forms the birth of her holy thoughts, of her chaste words, of the beautiful enchantment of her works, of the sweet treading of her steps, of the refulgent rays of her heartbeats. And as all these births are formed from the creatures, they take their way to ascend to their Creator, to recognize Him as their Father, to love Him, surround Him by cortege, and form His long offspring as our glory and that of our generative virtue. But in order for our generative virtue to fecundate, it takes our divine will, dominating in the birth come out of us. Otherwise, there is the danger for it to be transformed into a brute, and to lose the virtue generative of good. And if it generates passions, weaknesses, vice. And these not only do not have the virtue of ascending to us, but on the contrary, they are condemned as births that do not belong to us. December 18th, 1929. Ardor of Love. Specialties of the three ardors of love of our Lord. The devouring love, and how it devoured all souls. Tears of baby Jesus. I was thinking about the incarnation of my sweet Jesus in the maternal womb of the celestial sovereign, And my sweet Jesus, coming out of my interior, clasped me in his arms with an unspeakable tenderness, and told me, "My daughter, creation was ardor of love, and was so intense and great, that overflowing from our divine being, it invested the whole universe and diffused everywhere. And our Fiat, pronouncing itself and operating in this, our race of love, that ran and ran without being able to stop, if not when it spread everywhere and gave its first kiss of love to all creatures who did not yet exist. Its kiss of love was kiss of joy, of happiness, which it impressed on all generations. And our divine Fiat that ran together with it did not content itself with only kisses, but pronouncing itself, formed suns, heavens, stars, seas, and earth, and everything that can be seen in the great void of the universe. So the ardor of our love in creation was ardor of celebrating love, of happiness, of joy, with which we were to play with and delight all creatures. On the other hand, in incarnating myself in the maternal womb, our ardor of love, which, as we could not contain it, overflowed from us and did the same race as in creation, was ardor of love, of tenderness, of compassion, of mercy, and it put at risk the life of a god in order to find man and give him its kisses of love, tender and compassionate, its kisses of forgiveness, and enclosing the life of all creatures within its sea of love, it gave them the kiss of life, laying down its life of love to give life to man. Our love reached the excess in the incarnation, because it was not, as in creation, love that celebrates, that rejoices, but sorrowful love, suffering love, sacrificed love, that would give its life to make a prey of the life of man. But our love is not yet content. Place your hand upon my heart and feel how strongly it beats, to the point that I feel it explode. Prick up your ears and hear how it seethes, almost like a stormy sea, which, forming its gigantic waves, wants to overflow outside to invade everything and everyone. It wants to do its third race of love, and in this ardor of love, it wants to form the kingdom of my divine will. This ardor of love of ours will unite together that of creation and that of my incarnation, and will make them one. And it will be ardor of triumphing love, and will give its kiss of triumphant love, of conquering love, of love that wins over everything, to give its kiss of perennial peace, its kiss of light, that will put to flight the night of the human will, and will make the full day of my divine will arise, which will be the bearer of all goods. How I long for it. Our love seethes so much within me that I feel the necessity to let it overflow outside. And if you knew what relief I feel when, pouring it out with you, I speak to you of my divine volition. The ardor of my love that gives me the delirious fever calms down, and feeling refreshment, I put myself at work, so that all may be my will in your soul. Therefore, be attentive, and let me do. After this, my poor mind was wandering within the love of my sweet Jesus, and I saw before me a great wheel of light, burning more than fire, which contained as many rays for as many creatures as had come and will come out to the light of the day. And these rays invested each creature, and with sweet enrapturing strength captured them into the center of the great wheel of light, where there was Jesus, waiting for them from the womb of his love, in order to devour them, not to make them die, but to enclose them within his little humanity, so as to make them be reborn, grow, and to nourish them with his devouring flames, to give them new life, the life all of love. My little Jesus, just newly conceived, enclosed within himself the great birth of all generations, more than a tender mother who encloses the birth from herself, to deliver it to the light, formed by his love, but with unheard of pains, and even with his death. Then my tender Jesus, in the middle of that chasm of flames, so very little, told me, "Look at me and listen to me. My daughter, in the middle of this chasm of flames, I breathe nothing but flames. And in my breath I feel that the flames of my devouring love bring me the breath of all creatures. My tiny little heart palpitates flames, which extending capture the heartbeats of all creatures and place them inside my heart. And I feel all heartbeats palpitating in my little heart. Everything is flames. Flames spout my tiny little hands, my immobile little feet. Ah, how demanding is my love! In order to enclose me completely and make me give life to all, it put me in the middle of a devouring fire. And oh, how vividly I feel the sins, the miseries, the pains of all. I am still little, yet I am spared nothing. I can say, all evils have fallen inside and outside of me. And in the midst of these devouring flames, loaded with so many pains, I look at everyone, and crying I exclaim, "My love has given me everyone back as gift. It gave them to me in creation, and they escaped from me. It gives them to me again in conceiving me in the womb of my mamma. But am I sure that they will not escape from me? Will they be mine forever? Oh, how happy I would be if all would not escape from me. Their pains would be refreshment for me if all of my dear children, the dear birth from me, conceived in my little humanity, were safe." And crying and sobbing, I looked each one in the face to move them with my tears, and I repeated, "My dear children, do not leave me. Don't go away from me any more. I am your father. Do not abandon me. Oh, please, recognize me. Have pity at least on the fire that devours me, on my ardent tears. And all because of you, because I love you too much. I love you as God. I love you as most passionate Father. I love you as my life. But do you know, little daughter of my divine volition, what was the greatest interest of my love? That of devouring in creatures their human will, because it is the origin of all evils, and in spite of all its devouring flames, it formed clouds so as not to let itself be burned. Oh, what tortured me the most was the human will, which not only formed clouds, but formed the most sorrowful scenes in my very humanity. Therefore, pray that my divine will be known and reign in it, and then will you be able to call me the happy Jesus. Otherwise, my tears will not cease. I will always have reason to cry over the lot of poor humanity, as it lies under the nightmare of its miserable will. December 22nd, 1929. How the greatest works cannot be done on one's own, for they would die at birth. The three prisons of Jesus. The two mammas. My abandonment in the divine Fiat continues, and my tender Jesus, making himself seen as a tiny little baby, either in my heart or in the womb of the celestial mamma, but so very tiny, with an enrapturing beauty, all love, with his face wet with tears. And he cries because he wants to be loved. Sighing tells me, oh, why am I not loved? I want to renew in souls all the love I had in incarnating myself, but I find no one to whom to give it. In incarnating myself, I found my Queen Mamma, who gave me the field to pour out my love, and to receive in her maternal heart all the love that creatures rejected from me. She was the depository of my rejected love, the sweet company of my pains, her ardent love that dried my tears. The greatest works cannot be done on one's own, but 2 or 3 at least are needed, as depositories and nourishment of the work itself. Without nourishment, works cannot have life. There is the danger that they might die at birth. This is so true that in creation there were the 3 of us, divine persons, in creating it. And then we made man as the depository of our work. Not content, because works alone do not bring happiness, we gave him the company of the woman. In the incarnation, the 3 divine persons were concurring, and in my company. Or rather, they were inseparable from me, with the addition of the celestial queen, and she herself was the divine depository of all the goods of the incarnation. See then how the company of the creature is necessary to me in order to form my works. A creature who would place herself at my disposal in order to receive the great good I want to give her. So, do you want to be my second mamma? Do you want to receive the great good of the renewing of my incarnation as the endowment of the kingdom of my divine fiat? In this way I will have two mammas. The first, who let me form the kingdom of redemption. The second, who will let me form the kingdom of my divine will. And placing his tiny little hands on my face, caressing me, told me, "My mamma, my mamma. Maternal love surpasses all loves. So you will love me with insuperable love of mother." After this he kept silent, wanting to be rocked in my arms. And then he added, "My daughter, now you must know the excess of my love, where it led me. In descending from heaven to earth, it led me into a most narrow and dark prison, which was the womb of my mamma. But my love was not content. Within this very prison, it formed for me another jail, which was my humanity, which jailed my divinity. The first prison lasted 9 months for me. The second prison of my humanity lasted for me as many as 33 years. But my love did not stop. Toward the end of the prison of my humanity, it formed for me the prison of the Eucharist, the smallest of prisons, a little host in which it imprisoned me, humanity and divinity. And I would have content myself with being there as though dead, letting not one breath, not a movement, nor a heartbeat be heard, and not for a few years, but until the consummation of centuries. So I went from prison to prison. They are inseparable from me. Therefore, I can be called the divine inmate, the celestial prisoner. In the first 2 prisons, in the intensity of my love, I matured the kingdom of redemption. In the 3rd prison of the Eucharist, I am maturing the kingdom of my divine fiat. And this is why I called you to the prison of your bed, so that together, both of us prisoners, in our solitude, bonding together, we may make the good of the kingdom of my will mature. If a mamma was necessary to me for redemption, so also do I need a mamma for the kingdom of my fiat. And my demanding love wanted this mother as imprisoned, so as to keep her at my disposal. Therefore, I will be your prisoner, not only in the little host, but also in your heart. And you will be my dear prisoner, all intent on listening to me and on breaking the loneliness of my long imprisonment. And even though we are prisoners, we will be happy, because we will mature the kingdom of the divine will, to give it to creatures. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 27, Part 6. Fiat.